The first thing Daniel asked for wasn't forgiveness. It was freedom. After 8 years of marriage, he walked into our Beverly Hills home carrying a leather briefcase and a guilty expression that looked carefully rehearsed. Lena. His voice was quieter than usual. We need to talk. I looked up from the marble kitchen island where I was finishing my morning coffee. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the California sun bathed the infinity pool in golden light. Palm trees swayed gently in the warm Los Angeles breeze while luxury cars rolled past the gated estate. It was a perfect morning. Perfect for ending a marriage. I've already contacted my attorney, Daniel continued. He placed a thick envelope on the counter. I think it's time we got divorced. For a split second, I forgot how to breathe. Not because I was heartbroken. Because I had been waiting for this moment for almost a year. I lowered my eyes, afraid he might notice the tiny smile threatening to appear. Instead, I slowly picked up the envelope. So, I whispered. This is really happening. Daniel sighed with visible relief. I know I've hurt you. He rubbed the back of his neck. But Ava is different. Of course she was. Every mistress was different. She's only 22. His voice softened. She still believes in love. I almost laughed. Instead, I nodded. I understand. My hands trembled as I opened the divorce papers. Daniel mistook the shaking for heartbreak. In reality, I was trying very hard not to celebrate. If he had delayed this conversation another month, my own secret would have become impossible to hide. You deserve someone who loves you completely, he said. I just can't give you that anymore. Funny. He hadn't given me that for nearly 5 years. Daniel and I had met during our freshman year at UCLA. He was the ambitious business student. I was studying architecture. We fell in love almost instantly. We built dreams together before we built careers. After graduation, we married in a small vineyard ceremony in Malibu. Daniel cried during his vows. He promised I would always be the only woman he'd ever need. Back then, I believed every word. When his technology startup struggled, I stood beside him through every sleepless night. I designed the first headquarters myself. I skipped promotions to help him build investor presentations. I attended networking dinners where I smiled until my cheeks hurt while convincing wealthy executives that my husband was worth betting on. When investors hesitated, I convinced them. When banks refused loans, I found new partners. When Daniel doubted himself, I reminded him why everyone believed in him. 3 years later, Pierce Dynamics became one of Los Angeles's fastest-growing AI companies. Magazine covers, television interviews, million-dollar contracts, private jets. Everything changed. Especially Daniel. The first affair happened during a conference in San Francisco. He cried. He begged. He promised it was a mistake. I forgave him. The second affair happened 6 months later. Then another. Eventually I stopped counting. Every apology sounded identical. Every excuse became easier for him to say. You know you're my real family. I'll never leave you. It doesn't mean anything. Men are different. The words blurred together until they meant nothing. Then Ava entered the picture. She wasn't a model. She wasn't an influencer. She worked as Daniel's executive assistant. Young. Beautiful. Sweet. The kind of girl who apologized for apologizing. She called Daniel constantly. Usually crying. Always needing him. If she couldn't assemble a presentation, she cried. If someone criticized her, she cried. If she missed him, she cried. Daniel couldn't resist playing the hero. Soon he spent more nights comforting Ava than sleeping beside his own wife. I watched it happen quietly. Not because I was weak. Because somewhere along the way, something inside me had stopped breaking. About 11 months ago, I overheard Daniel talking to one of his closest friends after a charity gala. He didn't know I was standing on the balcony behind him. Lena? He laughed. She'd never leave. His friend chuckled. What if she finds someone else? Daniel laughed even harder. Lena? As if. He took another sip of whiskey. She doesn't even know how. That sentence followed me home. It echoed inside my head for weeks. She doesn't even know how. Why? Why was faithfulness expected only from me? Why could he chase excitement while I remained trapped inside loyalty? Why was my devotion considered permanent, while his was optional? One rainy Thursday evening, I answered those questions. Not with words. With a decision. It happened at an art exhibition in downtown Los Angeles. A fight broke out outside the gallery. Two luxury SUVs nearly collided. Security rushed over. People gathered. I stayed only because traffic had stopped. One of the drivers stepped out. Tall. Dark-haired. Expensively dressed despite the split lip bleeding onto his white shirt. He glanced toward the growing crowd before his eyes landed on me. You enjoying the show? He asked. I've seen worse. I replied. He smiled. I like honest women. I like peaceful evenings. I ruined that one. His smile widened. I'm Mason Sterling. The name sounded familiar. Very familiar. Sterling Capital. Real estate. Luxury hotels. Private equity. One of California's wealthiest families. I'm Lena. He studied me for a second longer than most strangers would. You married? I hesitated. It's complicated. I like complicated. He answered. I don't. I said. Then I walked away. I assumed that would be the last time we ever met. I was wrong. 3 days later, Mason appeared inside my architectural firm's lobby carrying coffee. Complicated, he smiled. I found you. And somehow. That was only the beginning. Mason Sterling wasn't the kind of man people ignored. When he walked into a room, conversations slowed. When he spoke, people listened. Not because he demanded attention. Because he carried the quiet confidence of someone who had never needed to prove his worth. I stared at the coffee cup in my hand. You tracked me down? He shrugged. You left before I could ask for your number. So you investigated me? I prefer the word researched. I laughed for the first time in weeks. That's still creepy. It worked. He wasn't wrong. Over the next month, Mason kept appearing in my life. Never too much. Never enough to feel overwhelming. A coffee outside my office. Lunch after one of my client meetings. An invitation to a charity gala benefiting children's hospitals. Every invitation came with the same sentence. If you say no, I'll survive. And if I say yes, I'll consider myself lucky. There was something refreshing about him. No games. No fake mystery. No pretending he wasn't interested. He simply was. Daniel, meanwhile, barely noticed I had started smiling again. He was too busy playing house with Ava. She had practically moved into his penthouse in downtown Los Angeles before the divorce papers were even finalized. Mutual friends couldn't stop talking. Ava is adorable. They're inseparable. She's exactly what Daniel needed. Exactly. Someone who admired him. Someone who believed every story he told. Someone too young to recognize manipulation disguised as charm. One Friday evening Daniel came home unexpectedly. I had just finished dinner. My phone buzzed. Mason. Dinner tomorrow? I found a restaurant that claims to have the best truffle pasta in California. I don't believe them. We should investigate. A smile escaped before I could stop it. What are you smiling at? Daniel asked. I looked up. I wasn't. You've smiled 3 times. Have I? He narrowed his eyes. For someone who's about to lose her husband. You seem surprisingly calm. I placed my phone face down. What reaction were you expecting? I don't know. Crying. Begging. Questions. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Instead, I answered honestly. I think we asked all our questions years ago. He looked uncomfortable. For a second. Just 1 second. Guilt crossed his face. Then his phone rang. Ava. Of course. He answered immediately. Hey, sweetheart. Her voice was loud enough that I could hear her crying through the speaker. I miss you. The apartment feels empty. When are you coming back? Daniel softened instantly. I'm almost done here. I'll bring your favorite sushi. You promise? I promise. He smiled while speaking to her. That smile used to belong to me. Oddly enough. I didn't miss it anymore. 2 weeks later, Daniel's lawyer called. The divorce agreement was ready. We met inside a sleek law office overlooking Century City. Daniel looked confident. Almost relieved. I've been generous. He slid the documents toward me. I want us to end this respectfully. I began reading. The Beverly Hills house. Mine. Half the savings. Mine. Vacation property in Malibu. Mine. Luxury vehicles. Split evenly. It was a fair settlement. Maybe even generous. Then I reached the section covering Pierce dynamics. Daniel would retain complete ownership. Interesting. Very interesting. I closed the folder. I have one change. His lawyer looked up. Daniel nodded. What is it? I want 35% of your personal shares. Silence. Absolute silence. Daniel blinked. You don't even work there anymore. I helped build it. You'll receive cash. I don't want cash. I want equity. His attorney adjusted his glasses. Mrs. Carter, company shares are significantly more valuable. I know. Daniel leaned forward. Lena. Why? I met his eyes. Because every investor presentation, every contract, every headquarters, every networking event. I was there. I built that company too. He rubbed his temples. You've never cared about business. I started caring the day I realized my husband valued it more than his marriage. His lawyer remained silent. Daniel sighed. If I give you that many shares, you'll no longer have total voting control. Correct. He stared out the window. Los Angeles stretched beneath us. Endless glass towers. Luxury hotels. Traffic crawling through afternoon sunlight. Finally. He nodded. Fine. His lawyer looked surprised. Daniel. It's okay. He turned back toward me. Anything else? I smiled politely. Yes. The cash settlement stays exactly as written. His eyes widened. So, you want the shares? And the money? I do. Lena. Don't push this. I folded my hands calmly. I spent 8 years helping you become wealthy. I think I'll survive asking for my fair share. He looked exhausted. Maybe because, for the first time, I wasn't giving in. After nearly a minute, he nodded again. Fine. The revised documents arrived 30 minutes later. I signed without hesitation. Daniel signed immediately afterward. Just like that. 8 years ended with 2 signatures. Outside City Hall, photographers waited for another celebrity couple filing paperwork. Nobody recognized us. I was grateful. Daniel unlocked his Mercedes. As I opened the passenger door, a glittery pink sticker caught my eye. Princess Ava's seat. With tiny gold crowns surrounding the words. I couldn't help smiling. Daniel looked embarrassed. She likes decorating things. I noticed. You can sit in the back. I don't mind. During the drive, neither of us spoke. My phone vibrated again. Mason. Mason. I'm flying to New York tonight. Wish me luck. Also, I still think you'll love the truffle pasta. I typed back. Safe flight. We'll test the pasta when you get back. Almost instantly, 3 dots appeared. Then another message. That's the closest thing to a date you've ever given me. Without thinking, I smiled. Daniel noticed. Who's making you smile? No one. Lena. He glanced at me. Are you seeing someone? I locked my phone. Why does it matter? We're still married. For another 23 minutes. He fell silent. For the first time since asking for a divorce. Daniel looked uncertain. As if something invisible had shifted. As if the story he had imagined was no longer unfolding the way he expected. And he had absolutely no idea why. 23 minutes later, the judge stamped the final document. Our marriage was officially over. 8 years. Reduced to a single signature and the dull sound of ink meeting paper. The clerk smiled politely. Congratulations. Daniel and I exchanged an awkward glance. Neither of us corrected her. Outside City Hall, the warm Los Angeles afternoon wrapped around us like nothing important had happened. Traffic rolled steadily along Grand Avenue. People hurried between office buildings. Somewhere nearby, a street musician played soft jazz on a saxophone. The world kept moving. My world had finally started again. Daniel cleared his throat. I'll drive you home. Before I could answer, his phone vibrated. Ava. Again. He sighed before answering. Hi, baby. Her voice was loud enough for me to hear. You're still with her? I thought you'd be finished already. I'm starving. You promised we'd celebrate today. Daniel glanced at me. I'll be there soon. You better. She laughed. And don't forget my flowers. I won't. The call ended. He looked uncomfortable. You can take my car if you want. I'll call an Uber. You don't have to. I know. For a brief moment, we simply stood there. Two strangers connected only by memories. I hope you're happy, he finally said. I hope you are too. He nodded once before walking toward his car. I watched him leave. Not with sadness. Not with anger. Only relief. 3 days later, my attorney called. The transfer is complete. You're officially a shareholder of Pierce Dynamics. I leaned back in my office chair. 35%. Enough to make every board meeting interesting. Enough to ensure Daniel could never make another major decision without considering my vote. Justice didn't always arrive dramatically. Sometimes. It arrived as paperwork. That Friday evening Mason returned from New York. He texted the moment his plane landed. Landed. Still convinced California's best pasta is waiting for us tomorrow. I smiled. You're unusually committed to this restaurant. His reply came instantly. I'm unusually committed to convincing you to go on an actual date. I stared at the screen. Then typed. Fine. 1 date. 3 seconds later. My phone rang. I answered. You couldn't even wait for tomorrow? I wanted to make sure you weren't joking. His voice carried genuine excitement. You'd be surprised how often people don't. I don't joke about food. He laughed. I knew there was a reason I liked you. The restaurant overlooked the Pacific Ocean in Malibu. Sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. Luxury yachts drifted peacefully offshore. Mason stood when I arrived. He wasn't wearing a designer suit this time. Just dark jeans, a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms, and an expensive watch that somehow looked effortless. You look beautiful. He said it naturally. Without exaggeration. Without expectation. Thank you. He pulled out my chair. You know, I said as we sat down. I still think researching my office was creepy. I've upgraded. To what? I asked your receptionist where you liked having lunch. I laughed. That's somehow worse. It was surprisingly effective. Dinner felt easy. We talked about architecture, travel, books, terrible coffee, ridiculous clients, childhood memories. Not once did he ask about my divorce. Not once did he criticize Daniel. He simply treated me like a woman worth knowing. I had forgotten what that felt like. As they finished dessert, Mason rested his elbows lightly on the table. I have a question. That sounds dangerous. It probably is. He smiled. Why did you really say yes tonight? I considered the question. Then answered honestly. Because you never asked me to become someone else. His expression softened. And because every time we meet, I leave happier than when I arrived. He looked away for a second. Almost embarrassed. I've been trying very hard. I noticed. Across the restaurant. Someone froze. Daniel. He had just entered with Ava. Neither of them had noticed me yet. Ava wore a sparkling white dress that looked more suited for an engagement party than dinner. She clung possessively to Daniel's arm. Then she looked toward our table. Her smile disappeared instantly. She whispered something. Daniel followed her gaze. The color drained from his face. He stared. Not at me. At Mason. Recognition came almost immediately. Everyone in Los Angeles business circles knew the Sterling family. Mason noticed Daniel only after several seconds. Oh. He said casually. That's him? I nodded. You've met? Once. Briefly. He reached across the table and calmly took my hand. Not dramatically. Not possessively. Just naturally. Like it belonged there. Daniel saw everything. His jaw tightened. Ava forced another smile before walking toward us. Well, she said brightly. What a coincidence. It is. I replied. She looked at Mason. I'm Ava. Mason Sterling. His answer was polite but short. Her eyes widened. Even she recognized the name. Daniel finally approached. Mason. They shook hands. Daniel. An uncomfortable silence settled over the table. Ava broke it. So. She smiled at me. I didn't know you were already dating. We're having dinner. I answered calmly. She giggled. That was fast. Before I could respond, Mason spoke. I've actually been asking Lena out for months. I was just patient enough to wait. Daniel looked at me. 4 months? I met his eyes. Yes. His expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Confusion. Calculation. Disbelief. For the first time. He started counting backward. and judging by the look on his face, he didn't like where the math was leading. Daniel didn't say another word. Not in the restaurant. Not while Ava continued smiling as if nothing had happened. Not even after Mason politely wished them a pleasant evening. Instead, he watched us. Or rather, he watched the version of me he had never imagined could exist without him. As Ava led him toward another table, I caught him glancing back more than once. Mason noticed. You know he's going to spend the entire evening wondering. Wondering about what? When exactly he stopped being the most important man in your life? I smiled faintly. He already stopped asking himself that years ago. The following Monday was Pierce Dynamics' quarterly board meeting. It was my first. When I stepped into the executive conference room overlooking downtown Los Angeles, every conversation stopped. Some directors smiled politely. Others looked genuinely surprised. Daniel stood near the head of the table. For just a second, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Nervousness. You came. He tried to sound calm. I'm a shareholder. I answered. I thought I'd attend. Several board members exchanged curious looks. No one had expected Daniel's ex-wife to become one of the company's largest shareholders. The meeting began. For nearly an hour we discussed financial reports, international expansion, and a potential acquisition. Then Daniel presented his newest proposal. I'd like approval for acquiring Nova Robotics. The CFO nodded. The investment is risky, but potentially profitable. Everyone looked toward Daniel. Then toward me. 35%. My vote mattered. I calmly reviewed the documents. Finally, I looked up. I have concerns. Daniel blinked. What concerns? The projected liabilities. The legal exposure. The debt structure. The room became silent. Daniel frowned. Our analysts reviewed everything. I hired my own. I replied. My legal team found several issues. I slid a folder across the table. One director opened it. Another leaned closer. Within seconds, the atmosphere changed. The numbers Daniel had relied on suddenly looked far less convincing. The chairman adjusted his glasses. I think we should postpone this acquisition. Several members nodded. The motion failed. Daniel's jaw tightened. The meeting ended 30 minutes later. As everyone left, he stopped me near the elevators. You planned that. I prepared. You embarrassed me. I protected my investment. He stared at me. You've changed. No. I answered quietly. I finally stopped pretending. News traveled quickly through Los Angeles's business circles. Within days, everyone knew Daniel Carter's ex-wife had become one of the most influential shareholders at Pierce Dynamics. Financial magazines began mentioning my name. Architectural firms started calling again. Developers wanted meetings. For years I had been introduced as Daniel Carter's wife. Now, people introduced Daniel as the CEO whose ex-wife owned over a third of his company. Life had a fascinating sense of humor. Meanwhile, things between Daniel and Ava were beginning to crack. Not because he loved her less, because guilt had become impossible to ignore. At first it was small things. He forgot dinner reservations. He answered emails while she talked. He stared out windows during conversations. One evening she finally exploded. "Are you even listening?" Daniel looked up. "What?" "I've been talking for 5 minutes. I'm sorry. You've been different ever since that dinner." She crossed her arms. "You're thinking about her." "No." You hesitated. "I didn't." "You absolutely did." She folded her arms tighter. "Do you still love Lena?" Daniel looked away. Silence. That silence answered everything. A week later I attended a charity fundraiser at the Getty Center with Mason. The rooftop overlooked the glowing lights of Los Angeles. The city stretched endlessly beneath us. Elegant dresses. Black tuxedos. Champagne. Soft piano music. Everything felt effortless. Mason handed me a glass of sparkling water. "I still remember you pretending wine tasted better. It usually doesn't." "I knew it." He laughed. "I've been waiting months for you to admit that." "You were right. I should record this." "Don't push your luck." He smiled. "I probably will." There was something wonderfully simple about being with him. No emotional games. No manipulation. No guessing what he really meant. If he cared, he said it. If something bothered him, he talked about it. I hadn't realized how exhausting my marriage had been until I experienced what peace actually felt like. Later that evening, Daniel approached us. He had come alone. Mason noticed him first. "I'll go say hello to someone." He squeezed my hand gently. "Take your time." After he walked away, Daniel stopped beside me. "You look happy." "I am. I haven't seen you smile like this." He searched for the words. "Ever." I looked toward the city lights. "I don't think I knew how." He laughed bitterly. "I thought divorcing you would destroy you." "I know. I really believed." He stopped speaking. "What?" "You'd always wait for me." I met his eyes. "I waited. For years. You just didn't notice." Another long silence followed. Finally he spoke again. "I made the biggest mistake of my life." His voice barely rose above a whisper. "I know." I answered gently. Not to hurt him. Not to punish him. Simply because it was true. Before he could say anything else, Mason returned. He naturally slipped his hand into mine. "Ready to go?" he asked. I smiled. "Yes." Without another word, we walked away together. Behind us, Daniel remained standing alone beneath the lights of Los Angeles. For the first time since I had met him, he finally understood something that came far too late. Some people don't leave because they stop loving you. They leave because you stopped valuing the love they gave. The conversation with Daniel stayed in my mind longer than I expected. Not because I wanted him back. That chapter had ended months ago. But because, for the first time in years, I saw him without the confidence that had once defined him. He looked human. Not the successful CEO everyone admired. Not the charming husband I had once defended. Just a man living with the consequences of his own decisions. The following weeks passed peacefully. Exactly the kind of peace I had once believed didn't exist. Mason became part of my everyday life without either of us forcing it. He brought breakfast when he knew I had early meetings. He remembered my favorite coffee order before I did. When I worked late, he simply showed up with dinner instead of asking whether I needed anything. He never tried to rescue me. He simply stood beside me. One Saturday morning, we were walking along the Santa Monica Pier. The ocean breeze carried the scent of salt and fresh coffee from nearby cafes. Families laughed. Children chased seagulls. Street musicians played soft acoustic songs. Mason suddenly stopped walking. "I've been thinking. That's usually dangerous." He smiled. "I agree." He reached into the pocket of his jacket. My heartbeat instantly accelerated. "Lena. I know you've been through enough. I know you don't need anyone to complete your life. And honestly, I don't want to complete it. I just want to share it." He opened a small velvet box. Inside was an elegant diamond ring. Nothing extravagant. Just timeless. Beautiful. Exactly like him. "I don't want an answer because you feel grateful. I don't want an answer because you're lonely. I only want one if you wake up one morning and realize life is simply better when I'm in it." Tears filled my eyes. Not dramatic tears. Quiet ones. The kind that appear when someone finally speaks to your heart instead of your fears. I laughed softly. "You spent weeks preparing that speech, didn't you?" "A month." "You practiced?" "A little." It was obvious. He laughed too. "So?" He looked almost nervous. "Is that a yes?" I pretended to think. I suppose. I could tolerate you permanently." He blinked. "Tolerate? I'll upgrade that word after the wedding." He laughed louder than I had ever heard. Then he slipped the ring onto my finger. 6 months later. We were married in Malibu. Only close family and friends attended. The ceremony overlooked the Pacific Ocean. As the sun disappeared behind the horizon, golden light reflected across the water. There were no luxury magazines. No television cameras. No business partners. Only people who genuinely wanted us to be happy. That was enough. More than enough. Life continued. Pierce Dynamics continued growing. Daniel remained CEO, but every important decision now required cooperation instead of absolute control. Ironically, working together professionally became easier than living together ever had. We respected each other. Nothing more. Nothing less. Ava didn't stay. According to mutual friends, the relationship slowly fell apart. She had fallen in love with the confident businessman who always knew exactly what he wanted. Instead, she found a man constantly looking backward. She grew tired of asking questions he couldn't answer. Eventually, she packed her things and left. No dramatic scene. No revenge. Just another ending. Months later, I attended another charity gala. Across the ballroom, I noticed Daniel standing alone. For a brief moment, our eyes met. He smiled politely. I smiled back. No bitterness. No anger. No regret. Only acceptance. Mason walked over carrying 2 glasses of sparkling water. I stole yours. He handed me one. You always do. I know. He slipped his free hand into mine. Ready to go home? Home. The word felt different now. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't expensive furniture. It wasn't status. Home was simply wherever I no longer had to question my worth. As we walked toward the exit together, I glanced back one last time. Daniel had already turned away, speaking with another guest. And I realized something. The greatest revenge had never been taking half his company. It hadn't been finding someone wealthier, or younger, or more successful. The greatest revenge was becoming the woman he believed could never exist without him. Because the day he stopped taking me for granted was the day he finally realized I had already moved on. Sometimes, life doesn't reward the person who holds on the longest. Sometimes, it rewards the person brave enough to let go. And that made all the difference. The end. What do you think? Did Daniel deserve to lose everything, or should his lesson have been even harsher? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this emotional story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, share this story with your friends, and write a comment. Your support helps us bring you more dramatic stories every week. See you in the next story.